Hi everyone, it's Clint Salter, your host for Dance Teachers Unite for 2015. And today is a day that you've all been looking forward to because we're talking about the administration side of your business. So often we overlook it because sometimes it's not really the exciting things that we like doing in our business. But I've got a great guest on board who has been in children's activities, after school activities for many, many years. I'm not going to give away his age, but he's about 21 or so. He's a great friend and knows the industry inside out of children's activities. And we're going to focus on dance today for you. And I can't wait for you to listen to this masterclass that I've got with the amazing Mr. Frank Sahlein. Hey, Frank, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Clint, and thank you for the opportunity to share with your members and listeners worldwide. It's a privilege to be part of this brainstorm that you've had, and I think a vanguard of the future. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, so grateful to have you here. Now, Frank, for those of you that might not know you and your work, in 60 seconds, can you tell us a little bit about what you do, who you impact in the world, and what is your big mission?
You know, Clint, it's a really kind of a phenomenal story, and it'll sound familiar to your listeners that came just to the industry as a dancer. I came as a gymnast and basically opened up a gymnastics school. From there, grew it to a fairly sizable business, stepped away from that to pursue best practices in the world. So we're very fortunate to be able to work in many countries in the dance industry, as well as cheerleading, gymnastics, swimming, and a few others. And the mission for me is to make the path smoother for everyone else. I want to enhance the business education and the way it's done and the fun way it's done and the inspirational way it's done, and change that to where instead of a labor of love, it's a love of love, even the business side of it. So fulfilling the business potential and the personal potential of each and every owner, teacher, manager, administrator is the goal, Clint.
Yeah, I love it. And I can see so many of our studio owners are already getting exciting because they're like, hey, if you're going to tell me how to make my life easier and my business run smoother, I'm totally on board. So put your seatbelts on, guys, because we're going to be in for a good ride with Frank today. Frank, you've been in the industry for a very long time. I mean, what's the evolution look like for you? Because I'm sure it looked very different 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. What have you noticed over the last few years that has really changed the way that especially dance studio owners are operating their businesses?
Well, like many of your listeners, I've been in the industries for over 40 years, and so we've seen quite a bit in terms of ownership, et cetera. The tendency, I'm going to give it to you by decades, okay, because it'll be a little easier to do that.
Sure.
And I'll give it to you in a smattering of industries. In 40 years ago, dance teachers were dance teachers, gymnastics teachers were gymnastics teachers, swim teachers were swim teachers, et cetera. And that's what it was. The money wasn't really any issue at all. Some people had not even made up their mind whether it was going to be a hobby or a vocation because it was a vocation for everyone. Granted, there might have been a few very astute people that thought, hey, I can actually make a living off of this. Not only can I do that, but I can do pretty well. That's the vast minority for sure. 30 years ago, about the same, maybe 5 to 10% had figured out the business aspects of it and were lit up by that end of it. 20 years ago, you can fast forward that percentage to about 20, 25%. 10 years ago, about 50% of the people had decided it was a vocation, not just a hobby or a love. And you saw the industry take off in terms of the top half of the industry in dance started really moving toward the business side. Whether they loved it or not, it was irrelevant. They moved toward the business side. The other half did not. 5 years ago or so, you saw about 60% look at the dance world as a business in addition to a love and a passion. Now there's probably more like 70% looking that way. And I love it because it raises the bar for all of us. It raises the bar for our quality, for our teachers. The customers then in turn raise the bar for us as well. But that's all a positive feedback loop that climbs on top of each other. And I'm really happy to see that. Now the question is, how do you do it really well, have fun at the same time, and preserve your sanity?
Exactly. Because I think so many, you talk about the technician, the dance teacher. They've come from a background where they love dance and teaching children, and they're like, I love this, it's the best thing in the world. And then they start their studio and they're in it for a couple of years, and they're like, wow, I'm working really hard, and this business is not really making much money. And, it's hard for me to bring teachers on board. And they're trying to grow a business, but they're trying to make that transition, fill in the gap essentially between dance teacher to business owner. What are some of the things that we should be looking at, A, for a new dance studio owner, and I guess B, for those more experienced dance studio owners that might be still stuck in that gap? What can they be doing to help them kind of get through to the other side?
Well, Clint, the great thing is about your question, which is really well phrased, is that it doesn't matter whether someone has been in the industry 40 years and they're just about to retire, or they've been in 20 years, consider themselves in the middle of their career, or they just opened up a dance studio last week. It doesn't matter whether they're in Rhode Island. It doesn't matter whether they're in British Columbia. It doesn't matter whether they're in Australia, whether they're in Nambia, whether they're in China. It does not matter. It also doesn't matter if they've got 50 students or 4 schools with 2,000 students. The things that they need to be working on are identical for the most part. And we term those things in 8 areas. We term them management. You might call it administration. We call it management. The big picture, marketing, of course. We talk about human resources, technology, finance, facility, risk, and inspiration. Those are the areas. Within each one of those, they each have stair steps. There's organized stair steps within those. But that pattern, that big picture of those 8 areas, and maybe you've got a couple more or a different way of looking at it, that's great. And the stair steps to success in each one of those are the same. And so I'm going to answer your part of your question that way and let you take that from there.